Okay, so we are live. Welcome to everyone who's watching live, and for those of you watching on the replay. I know there's quite a few actually watching on replay, so I've had some comments recently. So welcome. Welcome to my guest. So I'm going to butcher this again, I'm sure. So I said Bartosz. Is it Bartosz?
That's close enough.
Okay. Okay. So I never introduce my guests. I always ask you to introduce yourself, just purely because I'm going to miss all the highlights, all the things that you think are maybe relevant. So could you just introduce yourself, who you are, and any sort of context you think might be useful for people listening to this conversation?
Absolutely. First of all, thank you, Colin, for inviting me along. It's a huge pleasure. Look, a little bit about myself. My background is communications. I've studied communications and I've been in communications, digital communications now for the bulk of my life. It's a passion, and I do truly enjoy everything that communication stands for. And look, getting into the field all those years ago, back when I guess digital and web was new, it was an exciting space to be in. Kind of like I suppose a lot of people feel nowadays about AI and how that looks and where that's going and how that's developing. Back when I started digital communications, it was a real new space, and there was a lot happening in that area to sort of sink your teeth into. And I remember when I got out into industry, I was one of the few who was actually helping advertising agencies to transition into digital agencies as they've become over time. But as I've grown through my space in communications, I have realized the immense space which things like psychology and just the way human beings work and what makes them tick is such a huge part of communications. I mean, effectively, we're always selling something. And the better we are at communicating our benefits, our products, what the purpose of those are, the better of a salesperson we can become. The better communicators tend to do better out there in the industry to be able to communicate those outcomes, those benefits. And that got me really onto a whole other side, a whole other passion, which is, I think, leading into the topic of today. And that is just how to improve my I guess communications, my understanding of what makes people tick. And the best way to do that is look at yourself and look at your own habits and routines, and what is it about your own space that really helps you to live a full day, but live a full life, and really contribute to those around you, whether it's in a workspace or in a personal professional space. And that really grew out into, I guess, what has become a big part of my life right now, and that is the power of habits, the power of positive habits, the power of routines that really help to shape my day. And look, quite quickly and quite broadly, having two kids and being married and a home and all work and everything else that I guess modern people have nowadays. What we find as young parents and as adults moving through life is just how much energy, family life, careers, looking after yourself, can really take up. And if we don't have a space and a time that we create in the day to be able to fill our own cup, very quickly that cup can be emptied on everything else. And so one of the best habits that I've developed over time is really the morning ritual. I picked this up from a book that I read early on. I'm huge into self-help, and I read a lot of, and I listen to a lot of personal development material. and it talked about, it was actually a finance book which talked about paying yourself first. And I took that on board and I applied it in a personal energetic space. And what that really meant for me is getting up early and hitting the gym and putting myself first in that space, because quite often the day can get away from you. And when things do get hectic and the demanding routines of being a dad or being a husband or being a co-worker start to mount up, you do really start to see where the minutes and the seconds and the days fly by, and it's all too quick to turn around 3 times and say, oh wow, where has the day gone? I haven't really done anything for myself. And I found as that time goes by, you really do feel the impact of well, I found the impact of not looking after yourself. Before this routine was in place, I used to be a swimmer in high school, and I stopped that. And as I stopped that, and I stopped a lot of those healthy routines, I put on a lot of weight, and that I paid the price for that in a physical and mental space. And one day when my back was a disaster zone and I couldn't bend down to tie my shoelaces, I just decided that enough was going to be enough. And I went for a run on a 45-degree heat day, and that was harrowing. But I've never looked back since. And for my own reasons, health reasons, and just through feeling the sheer power and benefit of a powerful routine, it's really stuck over the years. I believe if you do anything for 30 days, you likely do it for life. And it was an easy enough routine to start, but like anything, easy to start but difficult to continue. And it's in the application of it every single day that the benefits really came.
Yeah. Wow. You've said so much in terms of, there's so many threads I want to pull on in that, but you've said quite a lot of powerful things, which I think is really important. I think I've got 2 young kids, and I see how active they are, and I love that. And so as a kid, I was active. I used to go out and play a lot. We used to skateboard. That was my thing when we were younger. Go over the park and play football. And then slowly things drop off, right? And then, I don't know, whatever happens, you sort of grow up, you go to the pub, you drink, and all those things kind of go away. But it was later in my, I'd say my 30s, that I started to get sort of into exercise, went running, played squash with my brother. And I realized how impactful the physical side is to my mental health. I started it for vanity perspective. I'd put on a bit of weight, and I wanted to date girls. So I thought, oh, okay, I'm gonna, sort of need to trim some of that extra weight off. And now I started swimming. I wasn't a great swimmer. I wasn't a competitive swimmer, but through doing those activities, my goal was initially to lose weight. But the big thing that stuck with me was the impact on my mental health. And I remember I used to go running with my brother, and he'd turn up at the door, and I'd go, "Hi, how are you?" And he'd go, "Yeah, I'm all right." And I say, "What's going on?" He'd go, "Nothing." And then we'd go for a run, and we wouldn't run competitively. We'd just run side by side. But it was almost like a therapy session, and we were just talking. And then the minimum we sort of run was maybe sort of, I think it was about 5K. And by the end of it, you've had like a really good, like you've let all this stuff out and you've spoken about it. And most of the time it was my brother talking. And I realized that, oh, he had a lot to say, but we kind of put this guard down, we don't want to talk about anything. But it was just this. And then by the end of it, he said so much. I was like, well, actually, you weren't okay. Like there's a lot going on. And ever since then, I realized how powerful exercise is. And I wanted to sort of come back to that point about being a father as well. So I also realized having young kids, they want to crawl around, they want you to pick them up and throw them around and stuff like that. So I continued my exercise, I think partly because I wanted to be with my kids and be active with them. But also, I found it a very good excuse just to have fun and play. And because of that, because we get older and society seems to say, you can't do this. I love skipping with my kids, and I don't mean with a rope, but just skipping down the street. There's something very joyous about that activity, and it's got to the point where I think my kids are a bit embarrassed when I do it. But it it's so that I can immediately tie happiness into some sort of exercise. And I, I know I've mentioned swimming, running, etc., but I think this is where sometimes people get overwhelmed with exercise, and because exercise can literally be anything. It can be cleaning, it can be gardening. Getting outside, certainly for gardening, is such a big thing, and just being outside breathing, even if it's raining or not very nice weather, it still changes your environment, changes something. And so we have these things that are, if I'm going to do exercise, I've got to run a marathon. But I exercise more from a point of view of enjoyment. I was never necessarily competitive. I'm not that by nature. I think that's actually served me well, because the people that I've noticed around, they tend to, very high achievers, want to do something like do a marathon, and they might go on to something, an ultra marathon or something like that. But oftentimes they'll do a marathon and then they'll stop, and then they'll need something completely different. But for me, I've found that the exercise has stayed with me. Like you said, the habit forms, okay, in a short period of time. But if you can build it into your life, and I think that's the most successful way. So I try and work out, I'm going to say 5 times a week, not a big workout, but I do it at home. But I don't also think about it exercise. People ask me, do you exercise? And I have to think twice, because it's actually so ingrained in what I do. It's like eating for me. And that might sound very grandiose and I've got it all sorted out, and I really haven't. But it's just entwined into what I do. And if I don't do it, I start to notice like the self-talk and things like that in my head. So does any of that resonate for you?
Absolutely. I think you hit the nail right on the head there, Colin. I think a bit about routines is that you carve out a time in your day for that particular, I want to say exercise, but it's a broad term for that movement, for example. And I know we're talking about exercise here in particularly, but routines can be applied to everything, can be applied to eating, can be applied to studying, can be applied to work. But specifically about exercise, it's exactly right. I've got that morning routine where I would go for a swim, but that morning routine has changed over the decades, from gyms to running to cycling to swimming to catching up with friends for coffee in the mornings. And it's just having that space where you're able to have that time for yourself, as you say, from a mental health point of view, to be able to move your body, to wake up really a lot of the time in the morning. Quite often that swim, especially on a cold winter's morning, we've just come out of winter here in Perth, Western Australia, when it was 3 or 4 degrees, and you're out there having a swim. Everyone's looking at you like you're mad, and in a way you are, but you wake up and there's no other way, there's no better way of doing that. And so, you've got that space for you to be able to do that. You've got that space carved out for whatever it means for you to be able to fill your cup first. And quite interestingly, you mentioned about running with your friends and your brothers and your co-workers. It's a huge thing, like quite often when we get into a space of deep thought, we kind of almost build up like a wall, because we have to really focus in on what it is that we're doing. But when you move your body, you start to really relax the mind, you start to relax those muscles, you start to warm up other parts of your body, and you start to really open up and have conversations, and have deeper conversations. And sometimes, going for walks, or going for those jogs, or even going for a sauna. There's a great club I've joined here locally, and they do just that. They get together with groups of professionals and they do hot and cold plunges. And it's a fantastic way to break ice. And when you have I guess professional gatherings such as breakfasts or networking events, you kind of have to warm up a little bit to get the crowd going, for people to start to feel more comfortable to have those conversations. But it's incredible how quickly you warm up and the walls come down in a hot and cold plunge, especially the cold plunge. Once you come out of that, the walls really come down, and you all of a sudden feel like you have to, talk to people, and you just have to engage. And it's a wonderful way of connecting with people, and it's a wonderful way of having that space to express yourself and to be able to have meaningful conversations with friends and co-workers. But absolutely, from a mental health point of view, it's just a way I find working that in with meditation, for example, which is another habit that I've sort of always have had in the background, but especially recently, I've picked it up to a more consistent level. What I find there's a lot of benefits about meditation, but one of the key benefits I find for myself is, especially when I do it at the end of the day, quite often we run around all day, and the only time we get to really go into a meditative state is when the day has ended and you lie down in bed, and then all the thoughts start running through your head, and then before you know, it's 3 o'clock in the morning and you got to go to work. When I meditate, it's just that opportunity to digest the whole entire day, and just to be able to go through it, and the mind is constantly racing, so we're always jumping from one tree to another. The analogy of the monkey or a cage of monkeys is often a good one used when comparing it to the mind. And quite often I just sit there in my meditative state, and I'm just acknowledging that is happening in my mind. I'm not trying to control it. I'm just acknowledging that is a cycle that the mind needs to go through to be able to go from a peak state of being in a professional space to then being able to be at home, and then to be able to be a father or a husband and a friend, and to be able to really be in that moment with those people in your household. Because quite often, as you could, I'm sure, all relate, you come home and you've got something on your mind, and it just keeps going and going and going and going until you lie down, and that sleep is that reset. And so for me, having that meditation session is that reset to then be able to have that last portion of the day in a family sense, to be able to then move in and to be present, or in a friend space to be present. But again, all of that comes down to routine, and all of that comes down to habits, and all of that comes down to having time carved out in the day to be able to do that. I wasn't a big meditator in my 20s. It was mainly just the gym in my 20s. But as the years go on, and as the mind and the body change, what you do during that space of habit and routine is to assist what is currently happening in your life. And as you mentioned, Colin, high achievers might need to train for a marathon because that is their motivation. Other people find financial motivations, like I need to join a gym, or I need to join a club, and putting that money down is what is keeping me accountable. But ultimately, at the end of the day, whatever the structure is, which kickstarts that habit, I think is worthwhile, because once you've put in those 30 days, then it is quite likely that you'll continue on with those 30 days post marathon, post gym membership, and whatever else is happening in your life. It's easy enough to go to Kmart and get a $15 pair of sneakers, and there's plenty of beautiful roads here in Australia. We're pretty blessed with that, and you can go for a hike, literally.
It's so there's a few things I kind of want to dig into, but I think I think the big thing that you've said a couple of times is about carving the time out. And I speak to quite a few people on LinkedIn, especially I want to say entrepreneurs, business owners, etc. And one of the things I normally ask 2 questions: what's been a small shift for you, and what's not really talked about on LinkedIn at the moment. And a lot of the small shifts, a lot of people have said about blocking out time, and that time is for them, and it's just creating space. And I think where a lot of people may fall down is that they say, "Oh, tomorrow I'm going to do this." But actually, I found if you block it in a physical calendar, and I don't know how it works in your household, but if you say, right, I'm going to put it in a calendar, I'm going to say to my wife or partner or whoever, okay, I'm going to do this, and then you set a time for it, or just say between these moments, I found that the success rate really goes up. Because if you just say, oh, tomorrow, it's such a loose term that, yeah, like you said, life just gets in the way. And we can dig into the early morning routine, because obviously the kids probably plays a big part in your life. But I think it's, if you've got it scheduled, then the likelihood of it happening is much more successful, and the likelihood of interruptions goes down. How did you approach habits, and how's it work for you?
And that's a great point, Colin. And 2 things there. The first, if you want to get something done, give it to a busy person, because they will not wait till tomorrow. They've got enough stuff on their plate for tomorrow, and they're going to get it done right now. And the power of right now is really the key element there. If things come across your desk, and a principle I like to approach, if something comes across my desk, if I feel I can do it straight away, I'll do it straight away. If I don't feel like I can do it straight away, I'll give it 5 minutes. And it's quite remarkable what I can get done in 5 minutes. And if it's taking any more than that, and if I really have other things that are pressing that I need to get on with, then I'll park it and I'll come back to it. But basically, exactly right. Tomorrow is always coming, but never here. And so when you schedule something into the calendar, and for me, the way that looks is you set the alarm for 5 a.m. And then regardless of what's going on, rain, hail, or shine, as you know, summertime by 5 a.m., it's beautiful and sunny. It's going to be cold, and it's going to be dark even by the time you get into work. But that stands. And whatever happens when that alarm goes off, whether you go for a swim, or whether you go for a bike ride, or whether you stay at home and you do the treadmill, and that's also an important part of it, is accessibility to, in this case, exercise or a yoga mat, or whatever the habit it is that you're looking to build. Accessibility is key, because this is where I noticed I started to fall down with gyms, is that it would take me 20 minutes to get there for a 20-minute workout, for a 20-minute drive home, and before you knew it, that was an hour. So I went to Kmart and got myself a $60 bike, and I jumped on that, and then that was my 20-30-minute workout. But again, like motivation, coming back to that, some people need to do it with others around, because that is the motivator, and I completely understand that. But again, exactly right, scheduling it in for a consistent portion of the day. In my case, it's 5 a.m. or when the kids go to bed, or lunchtime is a great opportunity as well. For years, I would use the lunch break at work I was lucky enough to have a gym at work, to go to the gym at work and spend that 20 minutes in there at that time. And that was all I got. But the other thing was also the kind of casual, just want to touch on the casual, unplanned workouts that you can also fit into the day. And that might be walking to a bus stop, which is a stop further. Or in my case, I used to park my car a little bit further away from work and just spend 10 minutes riding a bike in. Again, those sort of habits and routines, because obviously you start work at a certain time, so you know that at that time you will be riding a bike in, or you'll be walking in a little bit further, helps you to fit a little bit more in without, as you said, it just becomes a part of your life. Did I work out today? Of course I did. I walked for 20 minutes, or I rode a bicycle for 20 minutes. And that was before I jumped on the one I have at home, or the one that I have at the gym, quite simply because I parked a little further and I walked a little further. And again, all those things are simple enough to do, but it's about scheduling that into your calendar and into your mindset to be able to say, right, I'm going to do that. It's going to be difficult to begin with because I might be 10 minutes late, or I might have to leave 10 minutes early. But after 30 days, that tends to be smoothed out, and then you start to move into that pattern, into that routine.
Yeah, I love that because again, I've been around a few people, and something that bothers me is New Year's resolutions, because I know people love to start all these habits and go, oh yeah, I'm going to get really healthy, on the 1st of January, and you go no, and then you see people go absolute, we say hell for leather, just absolutely, want to smash every single run 7 days a week, and I I think we really underestimate the power of doing it small. Just start very small, because the thing that you can weave into your life is going to be like something that sticks. And we often think that because it's so small that it's having no impact, because we live in a world where we want to hack everything and we want to lose this weight. But the reality is, so I knew this lady. I haven't spoken to her in a while, but she used to do this thing called tiny habits, and a lot of it was just actually building up to the exercise. So she said, "Oh, people want to exercise," and they said, "Oh, just put out your yoga mat or your yoga shoes, and then for the first day you don't do any yoga, but you put the things out." And at first you think, "Oh, that's so silly," and well, I'm not actually doing anything. But the habit that you can continue to do and build on, just even in micro amounts, will build something massively, as opposed to, okay, I'm running 7 days a week, I've absolutely killed my muscles because they're not used to it, I'm aching and I'm sore, and I can't continue to do that. And we overlook it. And to when you were saying about park the car a bit further, it doesn't have to be this huge thing straight away. And if you haven't, I know we're talking about exercise and we can talk about other things in a second, but if you've not done any exercise in a long time, we should, and everyone says, oh, you should set these crazy ambitious goals. And I think they do that, a lot of that, and it's on social media a lot, reach for the stars. Yeah, but start from the smallest thing that you can, because if you continue to do that, in a year your life will have been massively different. If you've just started, even if it's just a walk, and just do the thing, and maybe next time park it 2 stations away, or whatever, or if you do that and then you combine it with something else, it's these small things. And what I liked about what you said is your brain references these things and says, oh, okay, yeah, I have done this. And I think a lot of this often came back down to a confidence thing for me. I didn't really, I think I doing these things and doing them consistently builds this kind of nice, warm confidence in myself that I can do it physically. I know that when my kids want me to, pick them up and throw them around or whatever, I can do it, or I have the ability. But that didn't come overnight. It was built up over a series of years doing these things. And if people listening think about it, just the smallest thing you can do, but do it consistently, and then build on that. I think that's the biggest thing.
Absolutely right, Colin. It's that 1% better. 1%, whether it's per day, whether it's per week, whether it's per month, or whether it's per year. That 1% better, if you add that up, it accumulates to a whole revolution. So, exactly right. And I've seen this happen a lot as well. Obviously, when we're younger, we are climbing monkey bars and trees and running and swimming, and there's just seems to be no effect. You know what I mean? When I look at my kids rollerblading and they fall over, they literally bounce off a concrete floor, get back up again, and away they go. I don't think I'd be getting up that quick. That's all I can say. And so, as we change physically, it's, for me, I'm really grateful that I kept with it, because now I have that grounding, which then allows me to still keep continuing. But I have seen, and as I've experienced, whenever I try something new, and if I haven't done it for a long time, it really is a case of starting small and starting slow, because too much too soon, and I've just seen too many injuries. You know, fitness goals change as well. You know, when you're younger, they tend to be more vanity based, but as you get older, they tend to be more functional based. My father, for example, had a double hip replacement, so he was a dancer for his career back in Poland when we migrated here in '89, and so his body was pretty well worn out by the time he got into his 70s, and he had a lot of trouble with mobility, and he you know, you could see the quality of life really dip, and finally when the operation came around, he was fairly nervous about it, but luckily all went well, and the change that it made in his lifestyle was incredible. The person before and the person after the operation were two different people. I mean, he looked like he de-aged by 20 years. Like he's 75 and his hair hasn't even fully gone gray yet. But what that taught me is, yeah, there's a lot of emphasis on beating your personal best at the gym. Run faster, lift harder, go stronger, go further, and that's very well and good. But that, you know, body parts are like car doors; they only have so many swings in them, and I do believe that to be true. And you can replace hips with metal ones or plastic ones or ceramic ones or whatever they use nowadays, and that will give you again that quality of life back. But you want to look after what you've got in the first place. And so starting off small does a lot of good things. I mean, first of all, it builds those habits. So you start with something small, basic, that you can realistically apply, but it also helps you to find your limit early. So if you want to run, but you realize running is really not for you, you have a different body type, different body shape, it allows you to stop before you do any real damage. If you're a swimmer, it helps you to figure that out. If you're a lifter, it helps you to figure that out. Some people are sprinters, some people are long distance runners. Starting small and building those habits allows you to figure that out early on without doing too much damage. But ultimately, coming back to the way the body changes, you know, moderation is key in all of this, because as I said, when you're younger, I think some of those goals may be a little bit more vanity based, but as we get older, two things really matter, and that is keeping in shape. And I don't mean you know, muscle bound, but I just mean in shape, and flexibility, because flexibility from a cardiological point of view, blood brings oxygen and it takes away waste. Wherever it can't get to, that's where issues can start. So things like yoga, things like stretching, things like anything that's going to basically get you to touch the floor, get you to put your hands over your head, get you to do some kind of stretching in the hip and the back and the neck and the shoulder areas. They're really going to keep that circulation flowing. They're going to keep the mobility going. And yeah, you'll get into your 80s and 90s, and touch wood, assuming you hopefully get that far. And then, yeah, it will allow you to maintain that quality of life when you get there. Whereas, you know, pushing yourself a little bit too hard in the 20s means that quite likely you might end up, you know, with some kind of an injury which you have to nurse for a little while, or an operation or something like that. I'm not saying it will happen, but I'm saying that there is a likelihood. So moderation is definitely something that I have, I guess, rediscovered in this space, and with a greater focus on I guess lifestyle. You know, getting up in the morning, pain-free, full of energy and clarity.
Yeah, I think yeah, I mean that moves us on to a few points. I just want to just touch on the yoga part, because I worked at a company, so I'm in Luxembourg now, but I worked at a company and they offered 1 week. There was I think you had to pay, but it was subsidized, like an hour's yoga session. I'd never done yoga before, and I was one of 3 guys. It was mainly women in the class, and I had a friend there, and he was quite rude about me actually doing yoga, and he said it was for women. And when I went, it was amazing. I'd never sweated so much in my life. So any doubters out there, especially if you're a man, but go and try it, because honestly, I could really feel the difference and just the power of stretching. Because we all say we do stretches, but there's nothing like a yoga stretch. Is next level. It's just it shows you how weak you are in terms of your muscle. So any doubters out there, then please go and have 1 session at least, and you'll be humbled for sure. So yeah, let's move on to the point of the sort of kind of a balanced lifestyle, because you talked about getting up early, and a lot of people I know maybe listening to this say that they don't have time. They've got big jobs, or they're looking after children. There's a whole load of things, and they say about getting up early. That's not always a possibility, but I often find these are just excuses. In many ways, we're finding excuses, and I'm not just talking about other people. I've found in my own life where I say, I can't get up early, but then I realised that I'm binge watching something on Netflix until like 11 o'clock. It's like, didn't need to watch that. You could go to bed early, but I've often found going to bed early, I don't know if it's from, I don't know, days of when I was a kid and being told to go to bed early, and then you're an adult and you feel that you can do it. I'm not sure, but getting myself off the sofa to go to bed was always one of those challenges. But in order to, so I've tried to do it before, where I go to bed late and get up early. And this just doesn't work for me, because I wake up, I'm still groggy. Whatever workout, whatever I've tried to do doesn't work well if I haven't put the sleep in. Does it work the same for you? Do you have to accommodate on the sleep side?
Yeah, absolutely. Sleeping is one of those interesting things. My mum struggles from insomnia, and I say to her, how did you sleep last night? And then she'll say, not too well. And then she'll say, well, I'm going to have to go and have a nap now during the day. I feel that same kind of a pull, or I guess missing routine in my life quite often too. I could quite easily stay up all night long and then pay for it the next day. The difference for me in that space, and the way I kind of handle it, is I force myself through the day if I've stayed up the night before, and that forces me to have a more stable routine the next night, which then gets me back into a routine. Now, that works for some people and then it doesn't for others. But what exercise does do in that space for me is that, again, it's one of those miracles of moving your body and getting oxygen in and just emptying that mental cache, whether it's first thing in the morning or last thing in the afternoon. Somehow getting that oxygen, somehow going into a kind of a meditative state when you are working out, helps you to then get that good night's sleep. So when the head hits the pillow by 10 o'clock or 11 o'clock, or sometimes as early as 7, because I'm absolutely exhausted, it's a clear one, and you've done what you've done in the day, some good, some bad, but at the end of the day, you hit the pillow and it's lights out. And I'm quite blessed in that, but I also put the work in to make sure that my day is structured to make that the priority. Coming back to finding that time in the day, and I do have to be mindful here, because as my wife reminds me, when she gets up, the kids get up, no matter what time of the day it is. And when I get up, no one notices, and I might as well just go off on my day. So I get that there is that there can be a difference there with people's routines and things like that. Um, but for me, yeah, absolutely. Especially in the early days, especially during the winter months, you know, something about sunshine that makes me happy, and something about wintertime that just makes me blue. And in the mornings, on those cold winter mornings, is basically every single excuse comes out before I do. Out of the bedroom, and quite often the way I manage that is that I literally have to lean heavily on those routines. I just don't think. I just get up and I just get out and I just get going, and I don't think. And I don't think until I'm already in that pool and I've already done 10 laps. And then by then you're already halfway there, and then you can jump in the sauna and it's going to be a wonderful day and everything just falls into place. But yeah, overthinking things, I think it can be a little bit of an enemy as well, because there's always a reason not to do something. And if we spend enough time thinking about it, I'm sure we'll find 10. And if we can just, trim that time out just to, as you said, some days you just put the sneakers by the door and that is all you do. And tomorrow you'll put them on, and the day after that you walk to the driveway to the letterbox, and then the day after that you'll come back again. But the point is that when you do that and you make that a routine, you make that happen, and you don't overthink it, you just go out there and you just get to it, you'll be halfway through it and you realize actually it's not so bad. I actually quite enjoy this. I could keep going for longer. But don't keep it to 20 minutes, come back home, because then you have some energy for the next day.
Yeah, I think two things in there are super important. I think from the outside, we see all these people that, that are on social media that everyone sort of says, oh, they're brilliant, they're amazing, etc. They must be super motivated to smash it every day or whatever they're doing. But the reality is, no, they've just built in a routine in their life that supports that. Their inner dialogue, critic, or whatever is probably fighting them just as much as you are. And that point you said about overthinking. So I remember I don't run anymore. I've changed my exercise habit, but I would run 3 times a week, and I would do it mainly in the morning, and it would be before work. And if I allowed my brain to switch on and go, oh yeah, it's a bit cold outside, or like that, if I allowed any of that to happen, then the chances of me going really, like, I was really avoiding getting outside. So that overthinking, just do it. Just like if you feel your brain doing it, even if you're feeling sleepy and your brain's still sleepy, good. Don't let it wake up until you're out the door. And then that part about having your running shoes by the side was always, I've heard people talk about friction. You want to reduce the amount of friction for you actually going. So prepare everything the night before. You don't want to go searching for any of your exercise equipment. If you're going for a run, shoes are laid out, running stuff, whatever, it's cold. Don't go searching in any cupboards or anything. That thing needs to be as seamless as possible. Your water bottle, if you take them on, whatever, it's all in the same place. Keys are there, whatever you need there. And then because when you're searching, your brain switches on, and it's kind of that, oh no, it all goes from there. So I think they're really, if you can do it just as frictionless as possible, and then build that into your routine. Something that actually came up is we were talking about habits, and we're talking about good habits, but it's also bad habits that you kind of need to unwind, right? And then something occurred to me that I had this thing at some stage. So when my kids were young, I couldn't find the slice in the day where I wasn't interrupted by my kids, or they wanted my time or whatever. And I started getting up at 4:30. And what I was doing, I was getting up, I was meditating, I was journaling, I was working out, I was saying affirmations, and I was still going to bed late. And I was trying to do all these things. And I realized I was stacking too many habits. So when I say bad habits, I don't mean bad habits, overeating, over drinking, or whatever. It's actually a combination of too many habits. So, again, we live in a world where we look at people and they're doing all these things and it looks amazing, etc. But I think it's about picking the habits that work for you, because meditation works better than journaling for me, but they might be interchangeable, or different seasons, like you said. When it's winter or summer, it might be changed. You don't have to stick with anything longer term. One might work better, but doing too much that you don't do any of them, or you don't do any of them very well, can also be a bad habit, in my experience. Have you experienced any of that?
That's a really good point, Colin. And yeah, look, I could definitely talk about that. That's the way I manage those is, again, working things into my life. So I remember when we were living a little bit further away from the city, I used to catch the train in. And while on the train, that was a great time to do things like meditation, things like journaling, things like planning. And then when you get back home, and again in the mornings and in the evenings, as frictionless as possible to be able to jump on a bike at home, smash out 20 minutes. That's it. It's done. Because it's quite right. You could stack so many habits that you either don't do any of them well, or what I also found is that you start to burn out on habits. You start to look at your day and it's just a never-ending to-do list. And so again, to make that easy, to make that something that you can pick up and put down, first of all, it has to be enjoyable. It has to be something that you genuinely enjoy doing and have a passion in, because I find passion will pull you along, whereas if you have to do something, you're kind of pushing it along, and you can only push it for so long. You have to kind of be pulled towards your destination as well. So first of all, doing what you love and keeping it as simple as possible. It kind of goes back to the way I read books. So every time I pick up a book, self-help book or personal development book, it's loaded with advice. Now, if I made it my mission to absorb every single bit of content from that book, I wouldn't get past a single book per year, because I'd be reading and rereading that same book. I accept that on some occasions I will adopt one positive habit out of that book. On some occasions I might adopt two positive habits out of that book. And I don't judge myself for missing the rest. And it's the same way with habits. When we have so many habits, positive habits on the go, if they fit into the lifestyle, if they fit into the routine while you're driving, while you're commuting, while you're I don't know, meditating and taking that 10 minutes out to unwind from the day, then that's great. But if you miss them, then it's okay. I think perfection is the death of anything that we can try to achieve, because nothing will ever be perfect. And so we have to accept that. And in accepting that, we say, well, some days I'll work out, some days I don't. Sometimes it fits in, some days it didn't. When you get a cold or a flu, why would you push yourself to do a workout? You wouldn't. You might meditate more. You might journal for 3 days straight, and then not at all. But what habits do for me is it's a constant reminder in the back of my mind that you haven't done it for 3 days, or you haven't done it for 5 days. And then as soon as you can, jump back onto it. And that really is a powerful bookmark in my mind, which has been built by habit. And then again, you look at your life after 30 days or 6 months, and then you say to yourself, as you've mentioned, meditation is more powerful than journaling for myself at the moment. So therefore, I might park that journaling habit and focus more on the meditation habit. Getting to the gym is too difficult. I just don't have the time for that. I've got a bicycle. I'll use that. That'd be my workout. But being more forgiving of yourself, I think, is a really important key in all of this. It's a really big part in building habits, which kind of sounds counterintuitive, because if you're missing days, you're not really building habits. But as long as you're doing the best you can every single day, as long as you are applying yourself to building that habit, might not do it in 30 days, might take 60 days, but you get there. And when you get there, then you can start to get creative with it, and you can start to see what else in that space you can actually do, which is relevant to your life and your current situation.
Yeah, it reminds me of a conversation I had, a live conversation I had a few weeks ago with a lady called Deanna, and she was talking about perfectionism, and we were talking about it in our lives, just in general, and how it shows up and how it can impact us. And I was reminded of that when you said, we think, and I'm reminded of this story. This guy told me that if he couldn't go for a run and he had to run flat out 5 days a week, he wasn't going to go. And he was like, oh, it has to be perfect. And so when you say about this perfectionist, for me, it's that voice in our head, the critic, the thing that, yes, motivates us, but also beats us up. And if it's not perfect, we're not going to do it. And that's actually self-sabotaging in many ways, because it's, I love the way that you talked about it, as saying, okay, be realistic. Okay, be kind of kind to yourself. Yeah, it's not going to maybe happen every day. Emergencies happen. If you've got kids, there's always going to be something popping up. But as long as if the same thing happens, emergency happens like every single day, then that needs some other focus. And if it's at that time of day, that it's going to be a conflict, move your habit. Again, it's about flexibility, kindness, not being a perfectionist around it, because if you're aiming for perfectionism, you're just going to beat yourself up and stop a lot quicker than you even start, right?
Absolutely. And this goes back to New Year's resolutions. It's easy to get pumped up. It's easy to get psych yourself into a massive run or a massive sprint, and the dangers of that is again injury and so on and so forth. But once that fire burns out, what's left? Well, that's why using that motivation strategically and using it in a sparing, forgiving way on yourself allows you to kind of do a slow burn. And we can say, are we a tortoise or are we a hare? I can certainly say I'm a tortoise. To me, I'm a firm believer in that 1% and building on that success and having that outcome in a few weeks or a few months, if you will. I know not every single life situation allows you to be a tortoise. Sometimes you have to be a hare, but you also have to be mindful of that as well, because especially as we get older, knowing where our limits lie with a lot of these physical activities is definitely key. But look, it really does come back to the burnout, and once we start to, we're always going to be more critical of ourselves than we will ever be of anyone else externally, because that monologue is constantly on replay in our own minds. And so when we do get hyped up into a certain state, whether it's joining a gym at the start of a year, and we miss a handful of sessions, well, then we're starting to build that pattern and that routine of missing sessions rather than going to sessions. And what unfortunately that can lead to is this further internal criticism around how well we tend to quit most things that we start. And so quite often with habits and routines, and this is why it's such a powerful tool for people, is that it helps you to ground you in your base and say, no, I do have willpower. I do have motivation. I do have the stamina and the consistency to be able to deliver, even if it's just going for a walk around the block. It might sound minor, but if you can stick to that on a regular enough basis, then you can build on that. And success can be built upon just like failure. And so one successful session breeds into another successful session, which breeds into another successful session. And so therefore, before you know it, quite simply putting your sneakers on in the morning leads you to be able to fulfill all the other passions and dreams that you have and aspirations in life.
Yeah. There's something else I found has been helpful is accountability. Not necessarily accountability for yourself, but accountability for other people. So years ago, I kind of, it wasn't really a swimming club, but it was people that met on a Saturday morning, and I knew some days I didn't feel like going swimming on a Saturday morning. Maybe I'd been out the night before. But what motivated me was that those people were going to be there, and that they were going to show up, and they go, "Oh, well, where's Colin?" And I had this conversation with with friends ages ago about CrossFit. Is CrossFit a big thing in Australia?
It is. Yeah.
And so we had friends that were very much into it, and I think the exercises are very difficult, but it was about community more than anything else. I know there's other things, but these friends explained that you show up and you get to know people, and you're going to say, right, they're going to be there, I've got to show up for them. So it was that accountability partner or group or community, I think, actually really worked. So when times are quite difficult, just to motivate yourself, whether it's raining, snowing, whatever, or whatever that your vice is, if you can find something sometimes when it's outside of you, for other people, that can also be a motivator. That's certainly what I found, and it seemed to definitely work for these friends that were in CrossFit.
Absolutely, accountability is a massive part, and you could be accountable to a number of I guess, to people or to angles. We touched on it earlier on. I mean, being accountable as a father to your children, to be able to be there, to kick a soccer ball around. I know it sounds basic, but having the stamina to kick a soccer ball around, it can be life-changing, because that's something your kids aren't going to forget. And being accountable to family, being accountable to your work colleagues, to your friends, and vice versa. So we all live in that finely woven social cloth, I guess we could call it, where we all kind of underpin and assist one another. And it's at those times when we can feel at our lowest that others can hopefully assist us to sort of perk ourselves up. And it can be quite simple as saying, yeah, look, the swimming club is happening. Where are you, Colin? Are you on your way? And that simple phone call can turn a nay to a yay. And if you were not so certain about going, you are now, because you know that those people are going to be waiting there for you. And that's exactly it. And being accountable to yourself, that's a big part, I think, in my space, being accountable to my own health. I mean, as a kid, I was very sickly, so my spine had actually curved off into the left hand side, and when we came here, I had an operation on my right knee to stop that knee from growing so that the other one could catch up. And if that operation hadn't happened, I'd be wearing a heel right now. Because one leg will be shorter than the other. Swimming, then, being the amazing sport that it is, helped me to balance out the whole entire body, muscle, skeletal system. And that, I guess, gave me the health that I can enjoy now, talking about habits and how they shape who we become. But effectively, that allowed me to understand at an early age the fragility of the human body. And I had a reminder of that, as I mentioned, when I stopped swimming after high school and my back gave out and I couldn't tie my shoelaces. That forced me to be accountable to myself, because I didn't want to be a burden. I didn't want to be a burden on my parents. I didn't want to be a burden on society. And I wanted to be living my life to the fullest that I could. So by having those unfortunately painful experiences as a young adult, then made me very clear in my mind regarding accountability and why I wake up at 5 a.m. to go for a swim.
Yeah, it's a good motivation and good accountability. I think I know we're sort of running over time, but the last thing I kind of wanted to touch on is this is something you mentioned at the beginning, was about sort of getting up and going and putting yourself first. And I wanted to talk about it because I think oftentimes, this is just my experience. So it's not being sexist, it's just what I've experienced. And please correct me if I'm wrong. In my life, I found it a lot easier to put myself first when it came to exercise because I could see the benefit. What I found with women and especially mothers is that for a period of time, often they don't put themselves first, and they find that that putting themselves first, especially when they have young children, to go and do some exercise, it brings up these feelings of guilt or shame that they're going out and doing something. I I experienced it myself, especially when my kids were young, and I was saying to my wife at the time, okay, I'm gonna go out, and so let's just write off the next hour because I need to go run or whatever. And I felt feelings of guilt, that I would maybe go and see my kids a bit later. But I then reasoned that actually, when I showed up with my kids after that, my mental space, my physical space was so much better. So it wasn't necessarily the time duration that I spent with the kids, it was the quality of the time with the kids. And we have this thing, I don't know, again, I keep being a bit hard on social media. I know there's a lot of benefits for social media, but we think that we have to be a certain way, be like super mums, super dads, etc. But in order to be the best version, I don't necessarily know we're always the best version. We do need to put ourselves first, and we need to go and spend some time, even if it's just solo time, just to go and think or have a space, meditation, workout, go and write, paint, or something. Just carve out that time, because I honestly believe that I was always a much better dad once I'd done that. And I know there's a fine line where you can go, oh, okay, yeah, I need 24 hours in a day for me to be a good dad. But I think, if you can find that time and put yourself first, and it's going to come with feelings of guilt or shame or whatever. But if you can overcome that, and you can, if you're in a relationship and you can support each other, and it doesn't need to be, oh, you've done a run, now I do a run, whatever it is, and however you're finding it, if you can find that and achieve that, I honestly believe that is such a powerful thing, because if you're feeling better, you show up for the people around you, even if it's not just kids, it's your family, your mum, your dad, brothers, sisters, it doesn't matter, or friends. You are just better that way, and that's my feeling.
Absolutely right. I think if you're not used to putting yourself first, there is that initial feeling of guilt that comes with trying to do that, and the amount of things that you could be doing with that time rather than putting yourself first. And I face it in our own setting as well. I quite often have to remind or encourage my wife to take that time for herself, to say, hey, look, I'll cook dinner, I'll take care of things here at home, go and exercise or go and meditate or go and do things like that. Quite often she feels more comfortable once the kids go to bed. And she's never been a morning person so much, but it really is a valid point that there is a lot of, I think, guilt associated with filling your cup first. And I think it's like anything else. It takes practice to be able to do that several times and see that everything's still okay. And with it then comes that confidence to be able to step up and step out, and to be able to I know it sounds selfish, but effectively, I was trained as a surf lifesaver during my swimming days, and one thing they taught us is carefully approach a drowning person, because If you do it the wrong way, then you can both go to the bottom, so to speak. And it is really something that I relate to life, and to in this context, filling your cup first. If you are exhausted and you're malnourished, or feeding your body the wrong things, and you're not getting any space physically or mentally for yourself, you don't really have a lot to give to anybody else around you. And so the people that you're supporting will feel that they'll feel how drained you've become. They'll feel how exhausted you've become. They'll feel how you're not so much fun to be around anymore, and you're not really giving them what they need. And then that can cause other issues within itself. But when you do take that brief amount of time, and we're talking 15, 20 minutes in the morning here, just to pay yourself first energetically, over time, that it's almost drip by drip by drip, you start to get that sense of energy, of positive energy flowing through you, that confidence, that strength, and that builds. And then you are able to give so much more to those around you. You're able to be present. You're able to be sharp. You're able to be focused. You're able to perform on a daily basis and have that consistency, and then to build on those wins as well.
Yeah, amazing. I think obviously, conscious of time, as I said, I think that's a perfect message to end on, really. I thank you so much for your time. It's we met through LinkedIn, and I know we had a conversation before doing this live, and there was other topics we talked about. So I think there's a lot more we can share in maybe lives going forward if you're available. But it's great because I love the fact that you've done this work on yourself and how you've built it into your life, and that you can share that. I know this isn't your business, as in, you're not a coach for habits, but the way that you've brought that into your life, and you work as well. And I think that's great, because it's lovely to see someone have such a positive impact on their life, and and be able to come onto this as a guest, and to share all of that. And so thank you very much for your time. I know you've got obviously kids, as we talked about, and that, and there's always things in the background, but yeah, I really appreciate this conversation. It was very enjoyable for me, and I hope people hear this and they start those little habits, those tiny things, and just build things into their day, because I think, you're a prime example. There's things in your life, and through exercise, and through some of those things that you've had to overcome, it's built a good routine and habits, and that seems to have worked very well for you. So I hope people take a lot away from your input today.
Thank you, Colin. And again, I really appreciate being on the live stream today. Yeah, exactly right. We've had the previous conversations, and there's a lot of good there, and there's a lot of power in these habits, and in these routines, and in this personal development. As you've mentioned, I don't do it as a coach. I can only really talk about the things that I applied to my own life, that have changed me in many ways, from managing my weight, to my back issues as a kid, and the way swimming fixed that, and the way exercise fixed that, and the power that meditation is having on mental health and physical well-being. So I really appreciate the time, and I'm always happy to come on and chew the fat and share some wisdom.
Brilliant, fantastic. Well, we'll end it there. So, but if people want to connect with you, the best place is LinkedIn, like I found you. Is that right?
Absolutely. Just look me up, send me a message, and I'll be more than happy to connect.
Fantastic, brilliant. Well, that's it for today. Thank you very much, and you're on my list for round 2. So appreciate it.
Thank you, Colin, and thank you all for watching.
All right, take care. Cheers.